I made something new, guys. It is the Churchfront Worship and Production Jobs website. So, if you are a worship leader, this is for two types of people here, right? So, you are someone seeking a job, maybe as a worship leader or a production director at a church. You go to churchfrontjobs.com, and then you go and you look at job seekers, because that's you, and you click Find Jobs. And then it brings you down to the page right here to show you all the jobs that are posted. And you can click on all the job postings, be like, look at this. Oh, Tampa, Florida, full-time production director. I like Florida. It's the best. This one's full-time. They have a part-time worship leader and a full-time production director, but Florida, the greatest state to live and work in the known world.
What about Valparaiso?
What?
What about Valparaiso, Indiana?
I don't think I would encourage people to look at the listings, but I don't think that would be on the top of my list to be in the Midwest. But definitely check it out. You can go here. This is a full-time position in Valparaiso, Indiana, and you can read this description and you can apply for the position. So what's cool though, this website has all sorts of features. So you can get email notifications. This is all like automated. You can say how many times you want it per week, if weekly, 2 times a week, because we have almost daily people adding jobs to the site. Put your email address in here. You can even specify the location and the types of jobs as well. So pretty fancy software here. And then if you're an employer, if you are a church, you can also post a job. So you're going to go click post a job right here. You can get a 60-day listing. This is the only plan we have available right now for $197. And yeah, you walk through the process. It's pretty self-explanatory, but this is how folks can find employment as a worship leader or tech director, or if you're a church trying to find someone to hire to get some applications, this is a great place to post your job. So I'm very excited. This is only a couple weeks old, but we already have quite a few job listings, 15 listings on the site so far, and quite a few people signed up to get notifications as well.
Love it. It's a good resource.
What do you guys think about working at churches? You've done that for over a decade now.
Yeah. I mean, I before I worked at Churchfront, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And as far as like actually finding the jobs, it was always like, I'm going to go to churchstaffing.com. And then eventually I was like, I'm going to work with Slingshot, or I'm going to work with this headhunter. And it was never, I don't know, there's so many different processes for it. So I'm excited to see this because especially if it is a lot of people that are worship ministry school graduates, we can kind of say, hey, these people have been through the training. They understand what it is. Because if you look at the requirements for a job, a lot of it is you need to have all of these skills, like qualifications or education, like technical knowledge and aptitude for AV and staging, or able to lead volunteers, or must be able to communicate, lead in worship, like all the things that we teach. So, even if you don't have any experience, this is the kind of thing where you maybe sign up for worship ministry school in hopes that you can be more qualified to actually apply for one of these roles.
Totally.
I just think it's also nice to have just a place that's worship and tech specific, because you see a lot of like the other job boards or. And they've got all the categories of ministry, which can be helpful. But this is really geared in towards those who are looking for or to fill a worship pastor or a tech leader or a both kind of combo role, as opposed to getting lost in the weeds of like, well, I could get sucked into doing like a student men worship hybrid thing or a communications worship hybrid thing. It's like, no, this is just gonna be worship and tech. Like those are the categories you get.
I'm gonna reject those job posting requests. Be like
for their
youth director
sanity.
and worship leader. Yeah, youth director and worship leader posting. Even if they pay for the posting, I'll just be like, refunded, rejected,
Yep.
knock it off the site.
It's like such a common combo, like that churches request, but I don't think it's a very common combo of having those skills.
No.
Yeah.
No. It really is. I mean, that's one of those things of like, man, you might be on the right team, but you're not going to be happy in the job or role because you're not gearing into your primary gifting. So because you're splitting it one way or the other, so you're just going to be in the wrong seat on the bus for a while. I mean, by default, because you're operating in two different fields. But I can understand like a communications tech director combo. But I think like the student family ministry worship or student ministry tech combo, I just think it often gets used and people only survive in those roles for so long.
Totally.
Yeah.
What do you
Maybe
guys
it's like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say like, you go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
I'm just trying to think of like, why would someone assume that would work? And maybe it's because it's like this person is young enough that they can relate to the youth, and they're also young enough that they understand technology. I can't think of any other reason that someone would put those together.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made, like, theoretically, both of those positions don't necessarily need to be full-time, especially at a smaller church. That's what I would assume.
That's true.
But we'll get back to the video in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about worshipministryschool.com. Worship Ministry School is our online training and coaching platform to help you build a thriving worship ministry. You can check out our course library. We've got topics ranging from how to set up for live streaming a worship service, how to master mixing sound for worship, musicianship, organization, using Ableton, running a click, tracks and automation, pastoral theology, Pro Presenter, Planning Center, all of the essential tools you need to know for modern worship. It's covered in Worship Ministry School. We pair online courses with coaching to help you get from A to B as quickly as possible, whether it's your own professional develop as a worship leader, or perhaps you're trying to implement a new system, whether it's live streaming or a new sound system in your church. Go to worshipministryschool.com to learn more. Click that Get Started button and apply to join our program today. What advice would you guys give to guys, like someone who's watching this, who's maybe 18, 19-year-old, wants to be in ministry full-time, is looking for an actual career in ministry? What are your thoughts and reflections on how to get there? Let's say they're like, hey, I hope by the time I'm like 25 years old, I want to be like full-time at a church somewhere as a worship pastor or tech director.
I mean, you do have to start somewhere, and usually that's part-time.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe that's like just saying, hey, I want to be like a super dedicated volunteer and like, really attached to somebody that I trust, that I respect, that, it looks like this person is doing really cool stuff. Like, let me learn from them. More that apprenticeship kind of like mode of getting to where you want to go, rather than the traditional education of I'm going to pay someone to teach me these things that might not be relevant in the actual field.
I'm gonna pay multi 5 figures, 6 figures to go to a liberal arts Christian college to sit in humanities classes, social science classes, to become a better worship leader. You mean that's not the best route to go?
Yeah, I didn't do that. Honestly, I went to a tech college. I learned audio engineering and studio recording, and I feel like that's been probably as useful for at least the tech side of things. I didn't do seminary, but I was able to, take some online classes for learning that stuff.
I think that tech side, like I could see the argument be made for going to get like a certificate in audio engineering, getting like studio experience or something like that to kind of help you. But ultimately, I think you've got to just get reps, like wherever you're at. You've got to get reps doing the stuff, and so get plugged into a local church. I think there's two distinguishing factors for somebody who's like, man, I want to be in ministry, and this was me, growing up for my entire life, basically since I was like 13, was I wanted to be in ministry full time. And I think you need to distinguish whether you want to be in ministry for the people and like shepherd and pastor, or you want to be in ministry full time to like be a part of the worship leading production as like an executor. Because if you want to be like really good at your craft, front of house audio engineering, leading worship, whatever it might be, that's like I could see the argument to be like, go become the best musician that you can be, go become the best mixer that you can be. Kind of, it's more of like the skill set that you learn, you refine, you train, you kind of, you just hone in on over time. The people side though, like the pastoral side, I would say you just got to get in the weeds and spend time with people. Like you've got to do some life over the course of a long time with the church and get in people's stories, do coffees, like meetings, those kind of things with people and getting to know them. And leading ministries, I think, is different than executing services, if that makes sense. Like as a tech director, I think there's probably both sides. You're like leading volunteers and you're building. I'll always remember Matthew Morgan speaking at Churchfront Live 2 years ago. Maybe it was, I think it was our first one, where he said, I'm not the expert in audio and lighting and things like that. I'm the team person. Like he knew how to get the people involved around him that did the thing, but he wasn't the expert in any one of those fields. And so he was able to really cast vision into how do people use their skills in this way, but he wasn't the end all be all know it all of all the individual pieces. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I think, especially those people skills, I think it's so important when you're, early 20s, find older mentors who have done a lot of people leadership and just straight up ask them how would you handle the situation? How do you how do you motivate people? How do you do this? I mean, there's books we can recommend that you read. 5 Levels of Leadership, all the Carrie Smirnoff books, all sorts of great resources out there. But yeah, to me, if you're an 18 or 19-year-old, or younger watching this video right now and you're like, I want to be full-time ministry. I know, I want that to be a big part of my life. Cause I also actually think like sometimes, I don't know what our conception of full-time ministry, maybe that will look different as time goes on. Just a lot of things about the workplace and stuff like that is kind of changing, right? Like for example, you guys are very involved in ministry, but you're also involved in Churchfront. Of course, there's lots of overlap there, but I think things are going to continue to kind of just not be the way they always have been. But I would tell someone young to be like, hey, learn a good skill. Obviously there's the key skills like musicianship and audio, right? Like those are some key ones you got to learn as a worship leader if you're getting going. And then, but I'd also be like, hey, find another great overlapping skill like videography or photography or how to design websites. These are all skills you can also use for the church, but start a little side hustle. And, instead of having to work a hourly job at Starbucks to kind of provide for yourself, do a side hustle that gets you good return on your time outside of ministry, but also you could help the ministry with that skills too when appropriate. And then, if you're just getting going, find a really healthy, vibrant church, find that worship leader, whoever's in charge of it, tech director, and be like, I want to help you, for free. Like I can be available up to 20 hours per week. I'm self-motivated and driven. I will go learn things. Cause that's the thing too. You can't just be a free intern to someone and just waste a ton of time because you're asking them a ton of questions that you could just Google, right? At least I know that's how I feel. If someone's going to come intern to Churchfront, that's why I'm not excited about it. The idea of it too much is because someone literally has to prove to me like, they're going to learn stuff, or I can tell them something once and they don't have to ask a gazillion questions like down the road, right? Because then it actually it might be, free, but it actually costs whoever's trying to teach you a lot of time. So find that person who you can just be an apprentice to, add value to them, kind of pitch to them why you're good at, like why you have potential and why they should invest in you. And I think there's a lot of worship leaders who would get excited about that. At the same time, don't waste their time. And here's the way I would pitch myself too. If I were younger worship leader, I would go find those other full-time worship leaders who are maybe 5-10 years ahead of me and be like, hey man, like I really want to help you. I want to become like a solid sound engineer for you when you're leading. And then I want to make it so like you could you could take a week off of leading worship once a month, and you can mix sound or go on vacation, and things are going to be okay, right? So
Yep.
that would, right, wouldn't that sound attractive to you guys if you were still in your
Oh yeah.
full-time roles?
You got to
So,
pitch value for sure.
and I have no doubt that like an 18-year-old has the total competency to do that, to like be. I know a lot of 18-year-olds who are musically and technically capable of doing something like that. So, and very quickly, you're either going to start building up your resume and experience. So like when you do start applying for maybe a part-time position 2 years down the road, you'll have a great reference from the church that you apprenticed at, interned at, or whatever. And then that's going to, I think, go a long way. In the meantime, you can create recordings of yourself leading and doing your thing that you can use when you apply for these jobs. Yeah, it just takes a lot. It's a decent chunk of sacrifice up front, but you're still at an age where, hopefully your life expenses are super low. You could be living with your parents still, saving a bunch of money that way. And then that's one way to get your career off the ground.
I especially would say the people who I have had conversation with, I think the kind of the pros in the industry that we have had conversations with, I've never heard one of them say they're where they are because of a college degree. Like almost everybody that we've ever sat down at a table with and had a meal or whatever and heard their story, it's been that. It's been, well, I was just hungry. I wanted to become really good at what I wanted to do. And so I just surrounded myself with those people and, contributed, added value, spent time with them. And now I'm, overseeing this area or whatnot. I've never heard somebody be like, well, I went to this university and it fully equipped me to do this job, So I think you're right on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's my
I think,
story.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
the university days are like behind us in terms of that making any sense. I think people are becoming aware of it because like I have a lot of friends who did, they were about the same age as me. They're 30 years old and they still have like a significant amount of student debt, and then going in, they've been in the church world, and then you can't like ever afford to pay off that debt. Then you're like, well, I'm not going to work a church job anymore. I got to work something that would pay me 2 to 3 times more to work for a tech company or sales job or something like that. And it's kind of sad. That's why I just like, that's part of the big why behind why we create a worship ministry school, right? We're not super formalized as a accredited educational institution, but like, like Luke just said, the vast majority of people we're actually learning from, like Luke Hendrickson, like he's never been, I'm pretty sure, and I've heard his story a couple times. There was no like, oh yeah, was trained at some prestigious audio mix engineer school, right? Like, no,
Right.
he was like a homeschool kid, passionate about audio and mixing, and that's all he did. And then next thing you know, he's mixing albums that millions of people are listening to.
Yeah.
And then similar for me. Yes, there's definitely helpful elements to seminary, and I think the only reason that made sense for me to go to that is because I did get a full scholarship, so I didn't have to take on a financial burden for it. And then even my college degree, the most practical part of that was the music training. Like I still to this day use things like ear training, music theory. But the great thing about that is like you don't have to spend 25, 40 grand a year to get that type of training. Like that's all online. Right. Some of it, which we touch on in worship ministry school, there's other great sites for it. It's so much more affordable than ever.
Yeah. I think the thing that universities or colleges provide is the pairing of the actual information and knowledge along with in-person integrate. Like, you're on campus, like you can be studying with people that are studying in your same field. You can be hanging out with them, having conversations as you go out to restaurants or spend time with each other. So the actual community aspect of it is something you have to find outside of YouTube University, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend because you're going to spend half of your time just finding useful information. So something like an online school, but then where are you going to find the actual hands-on experience is something you have to figure out, which is where what we were talking about earlier, just finding someone that you enjoy what they're doing and trying to help them out
Thanks so much for watching this video. I want to invite you again to check out worshipministryschool.com, where you can apply to join our online course in coaching program. Also, be sure to leave a like on this video and share it with your friends in worship ministry. We'll see you next time.